Today we're going to refresh our memories on how to graph inequalities. So before we do that, we want to think about how do we know whether the line is dotted or solid? How do we know whether to shade above or below? So if you guys recall, with our four inequalities that we have a greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, or less than. So if I need a solid line, it's going to be the inequalities that have the or equals to. So a greater than or equal to, or a less than or equal to. If it's going to be a dotted or dashed line, that's the other ones that don't have lines underneath of them. So that's either a greater than or a less than. So that's when you're drawing your line on your graph. Remember that it's going to look like this. Whereas the solid line is just like you're used to doing, pulling it all the way through the graph. Now to talk about shading above or below. Above is going to be everything that is greater than. So we have the greater than symbol or the greater than or equal to symbol. So that's if I had a line and I shade up above that line. So below is just going to be the opposite. So it'll be a less than or a less than or equal to line. So here's below. Okay, so we're going to do some practice because sometimes our equations aren't ready for us to graph. So when I look at this equation, I know that I need to rewrite it into slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is written as y equals mx plus b. Well, in this case, it won't be an equal sign, it'll be an inequality sign. So I have to rewrite them. So I'm going to rewrite them first next to each other so I have space to do my work. Having space to do work is always important. What is my first step when I look at this equation? I need to move the x. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides and then rewrite what I have. Y is greater than, and I can't subtract x from the 2. So instead, I'm going to just write them next to each other. Negative x plus 2. Because remember that I want it to look like this, something x plus something. I can divide by the number in front of y, which actually happens to be nothing, so I'm finished this step. I can then identify my slope and my y-intercept. My slope is negative x, but negative x is the same thing as saying negative 1. My y-intercept is 2. Now I can do the same thing for the next equation. My first step, subtract 2x, subtract 2x. Again, I can't take 2x away from 1, so I rewrite everything I have. And this time I do have to divide by something. If there's no number, what number goes here? I have a 1. So I can divide everything by negative 1. And that means that I get y, and I have a positive 2x and a negative 1, and my inequality sign flips. So now if I identify my slope and y-intercept, my slope is 2, my y-intercept is negative 1. I'm not done yet though. There's one other thing that I want to write down that's going to help me when I graph. So when I come back to this one and I look at this inequality sign, that inequality sign is going to help me determine whether it's dotted or solid or if it's above or below. So just like we talked about on the last slide, this symbol means it's going to be above and dotted. And I can do the same thing over here. Here's my symbol. And that symbol tells me below and dotted. So now I can take the time and graph these on my graph. Instead of just drawing a line where I think it needs to go, I'm going to start by putting my point on the y-intercept. Remember that this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. So what axis do I start on? I'm going to start at 2 on the y-axis. And from that dot, I'm going to go down 1, right 1. Because that slope is negative 1, and I'm always going to the right if possible, that means I'm going down 1, right 1. And then you can take your line tool and we said it was going to be dotted, and we'll draw our dotted line. That's not what I wanted. Through my equation. We want to try and be as exact as possible, so if you want, you can always add more dots so that you know that your line is being as exact as possible. And then we can shade. I'm going to choose yellow for this one. I'll just mark it over here so I know which line it is, and I'm shading above. Next, I'm going to graph the other one. So I need to start at -1, and this time my slope is 2. So up 2, right 1, because no matter what, we're going to the right. Up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. And then you can use your line tool. We said it was going to be dotted. Draw it all the way through the graph. And now we said that we were shading below. I'm going to use blue for this one. So below, if I take any dot, and I'm not sure which way I need to go to any of the dots that we just drew and know that we're going below. So it's going to go lower. So that's down here. And the last step is going to have to pick a solution in the shaded area, but not any shaded area. I need it in the double shaded area. So I'm looking for a solution that falls in this green area that I've made. I can pick any coordinate. I kind of choose not to go near the line because these are dotted lines, so we cannot include any of those dots. So if you want to pick something easy, I know I can use 4, 4. You could literally pick anything as long as it's in the green area, but I'm going to pick 4, 4. So I'm going to draw a dot and then come back with my pen and say a solution is 4, 4. And there it is. Now it's your turn.